Somewhat lost in the 25th anniversary Elder Scrolls panel at PAX East was that Bethesda's Todd Howard confirmed that they were using entirely new technology for Starfield, and an even more updated version of that technology for the Elder Scrolls 6. People, including myself, really latched on to the other statement he made regarding both games, which was that neither of them would be at E3 2019. After the initial wave of disappointment, I began to go back through the stream and focus on other things. One of those, as mentioned earlier, was that Bethesda confirmed that they were employing new technology in the creation of Starfield. He specifically did not mention a new engine, but it sounds like the changes made to their existing engine are rather significant. If you have watched my Elder Scrolls for a New Generation series, which I am pinning right now, you'll know that a new or heavily updated engine was one of the most important requirements for the series, in my opinion. In that video, I made the argument that what we expect from our video games these days has changed tremendously from what was passable back when Skyrim was released. Even Fallout 4's use of the creation engine, which had been updated somewhat by that time, showed that the engine's foundation was straining under the weight of the new generation of hardware and what was expected of it. One could make the argument that the sad state of Fallout 76 when it initially released is even more proof that something must be done. So, with Todd Howard confirming these upgrades, can we rest easy? Well, not entirely, but it is definitely cause for some cautious optimism. Everyone knows that the creation engine is long in the tooth, and we can assume that over the last few years, Bethesda has heavily updated and refined it outside of what they've been doing for Fallout 76. Previously, I was of the opinion that they needed to completely ditch the engine, but some comments by Todd Howard have given me second thoughts about this. In an interview with GameStar, originally about Fallout 76, he said, quote, "The game," meaning Fallout 76, "uses a new renderer, a new lighting system, and a new system for the landscape generation. For Starfield, even more of it changes. And for the Elder Scrolls 6, out there on the horizon, even more. We like our editor. It allows us to create worlds really fast, and modders know it really well. There are some elementary ways we create our games, and that will continue because that lets us be more efficient, and we think it works best." End quote. So first, he reminded us that all of the developers at Bethesda are extremely familiar and comfortable with the engine, making game development go more smoothly. This, obviously, makes a great amount of sense. In theory, familiarity with an engine, or at least the core components of the engine, should make for more efficient game development and thus faster development timelines. Either that, or you can program more into the game, adding more quests, locations, or things for the player to do. Take Skyrim, for example. It was developed in a relatively small amount of time, at least by today's standards. Bethesda made the vast majority of the game between the release of Fallout 3 in October of 2008 and late summer of 2011, as Skyrim released in November of that year. During that time period, they also had to step in and help Obsidian fix Fallout New Vegas, whose initial release was plagued with horrific technical issues. So for at least a subset of people at Bethesda, their work on Skyrim was delayed by at least a few months. But back to the point at hand. This amazing huge world with nearly 300 unique quests, hundreds of locations both above and below ground, and over 60,000 lines of dialogue was built and shipped in less than 3 years, with a team of approximately 100 people. Even given the technical limitations of the time, as well as what was expected from games in those days, it is truly a feat that the game has continued to live on and was developed in under 3 years. This is all to say that it was possible likely because the developers at Bethesda were so comfortable and experienced in using their in-house game development engine. I think it is hard to refute that. That is also to say that it comes with some severe restrictions that cannot be overcome in such a short time period, like not being able to climb ladders, as Todd Howard has lamented, for example. Still, it is definitely something important to consider, especially for someone in Todd Howard's position. Case in point, Kotaku released an article outlining what went wrong with Anthem's development. A huge portion of the problem was related to BioWare constantly fighting with EA's Frostbite engine. This was so much of an issue that DICE sent in a crack team to help them with it. Something like this is precisely what Bethesda wants to avoid. Limitations of the engine and all, if you end up making a bad game, it doesn't matter if you can now climb ladders. The second main point, and almost equally important to Bethesda's success, is the familiarity of their engine with modders. Make no mistake, another reason why Morrowind, Oblivion, their Fallout games, and especially Skyrim are relevant many years later is because of the modding community. Their engine is something that thousands of modders and budding developers are familiar with and have learned on. The cynical part of me says that Todd Howard may simply be using this as an excuse, but I genuinely believe it is a significant point of consideration for Bethesda. Think about it. If the longevity of your game is tied not only to the overall quality of the base experience as it is purchased by the consumer, but also due to the ability to, once you complete the game, modify it in some way to make it new again, then wouldn't you be reticent to change the game engine too much? It is a fact that Bethesda's games have the biggest modding community in all of video games. In fact, there really isn't even a close second place. This is something that one would assume is near and dear to Bethesda, because it keeps their games relevant far, far longer than nearly any other publisher. That equates to sales, and many people who have double and triple dipped on their games over the years, and who have reinstalled those games as new mods were released. It is certainly a big deal to Bethesda as well as to the community, so cries to change the engine could result in the modding community becoming fractured or significantly reducing in size. We have seen what even small changes to the community can do, and Creation Club is an example of that. An entirely new engine brings an entirely new set of challenges, though it must also be pointed out that challenges aren't necessarily a bad thing, nor is change. Now, it would be irresponsible of me to not point out that all of the things that Todd Howard said regarding their engine were also true for Fallout 76, and well, we see how that turned out, at least initially. They clearly pushed their game engine in a way that it was never designed, and that was to be the playground for an open-world online game. In fairness to Bethesda, this was uncharted territory for them, so they do indeed deserve some leeway here. We can discuss whether they should have released the game in the state it was in, but it is likely that may have been a decision that was made higher than Todd Howard, and in the end, it doesn't really matter regarding what we are discussing here today. Still, Todd Howard has a way of making things seem rosy, stating that Fallout 76's revised version of the Creation Engine had a new renderer, a new lighting system, and a new system for landscape generation. All of those are true statements, and yet the engine still exhibited many of the main issues it always has, with many of the same types of glitches you'd see in Fallout 3 or Skyrim still manifesting themselves nearly a decade later. So it seems clear to me that Bethesda truly believes that a modified version of their existing game engine is the way to go. It is too early to pass judgment, and my gut feeling is that we will definitely be able to tell that Starfield is built on the same foundation, but again, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. We can hope that all of the changes Bethesda has made specifically for Starfield, to include improvements forced by issues that they've had related to Fallout 76, will result in a nice middle ground. This middle ground would be something that exists between an entirely new engine with all new features and capabilities, and something that they are familiar with and that modders can embrace and learn quickly. It is evident that we still have a long wait until we see Starfield. I am holding out hope we at least get a trailer at E3, and I'll be making a video about that in the near future. In the meantime, we can all enjoy more rampant speculation. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for watching.